Welcome back to the Beyond the Wire podcast. I am your host, Tim Keller. Along with me, as he always is Mr. Matt Disher. Matt, the shelves behind you, they're slowly growing with what they have on them. It looks good.
Those are called books, Tim.
Books. Oh,
you read them. I don't read them. I just have them up there for decoration.
You've been told that that's what you do with these things called books.
Well, the idea was I get shelves so I can put books on them so I look like I'm smart.
I got you.
Actually, I do. I have read most of these. I've read some of the ones over here. Some of them I have not. I get books for different events that I go to. I've got a book up there from Brian Anderson, No Turning Back. Gosh, I've got the General Mattis book up there.
Nice.
Once a Warrior from Jake Wood, who is the CEO of Team Rubicon. Those are probably the three up on that side that I have not read yet. But I have my. These are like the self-help books, and these are the military-esque books.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So the Idiot's Guide to Podcasting might be up there.
That would be on the self-help side. Yeah.
Gotcha, Matt.
We're getting there.
Yeah. We also have a fantastic guest, former Army recruiter, and now he's a sales professional, Caleb Shihady. Did I say that right?
Shihady.
Shihady?
Yeah.
My apologies.
No.
I try. I'm not great with this.
It's great for telemarketers.
Yeah, Matt, I'm going to have to borrow that book then. But as we always like to do, we like to get into some news first. And, let's just start with a serious one. Military.com, great articles on there. The first one that popped out to me this morning was the age-old question during an interview: what is your biggest weakness? I know for young individuals just getting out of the service or maybe on their first couple job interviews, when faced with this question, really don't know how to answer this, especially if they've never heard this before. And they're going to probably stumble. I'll work until you tell me I can't. And then, and really HR or the hiring manager that's sitting there in front of you is going to be, they can see right through that answer.
Yeah.
Or as we joked a little bit before we went live, I was posed with this question as a young man, and I was just like, I'm super dedicated, and I'll do whatever you tell me to do. And Matt joked, I'm just such a giver.
I can't stop giving. Yeah. I just can't stop giving. I don't know how to stop it. Or, my favorite is I really like Oreos.
Yeah, I'm addicted to Oreos. I can't stop eating them, and then they just slowly slide an Oreo in their mouth. Is this okay?
This is one of those questions that they ask you to see if you can do a little bit of self-reflection, though. Mm-hmm. So in all seriousness, I have been asked this question before. I recently filled out an application for a leadership program. And one of the questions was, what do you see as your biggest opportunity, which is another way to say, what is your biggest weakness? Yep. And I actually went to some of my coworkers, including my boss, and I said, hey, how would I answer this question? Like, what would you say I need to improve? And I've heard this from two different supervisors in my career, and that is that I need to talk about the successes more often. I need to brag more, and I know that's a funny thing to say. I tend not to show off successes. Like, the successes sit there and they speak for themselves, and that's how I operate. So that's a great example of what that question is really asking you. Is like, what do you need to do better in the workplace? What do you need to improve? I wouldn't recommend going in there and saying, you know what, I'm late to work every day. Yeah. And
I need to get better at that. I have an alarm. I just never set it.
Right. I like to drink beer at lunch.
Yeah.
6 or 8 of them, because you won't get that job.
Yeah. Yeah. I like a nice ham and cheese sandwich. Goes great with ham and cheese? Miller Lite.
Right.
Absolutely love it.
In the break room.
Yeah. What time's lunchtime? I'm kind of thirsty. Yeah. It's a question. I honestly, on the past few interviews I've done over the past few years, that one doesn't come up. Most of these interview questions are now kind of corporate. They want to hear about a time. Tell me about a time where, your team was failing or was struggling, and what did you do to help the team succeed, and tell us how it worked.
Right.
It's more of those type questions nowadays, it seems.
That's called behavioral based interviewing. And they're trying to figure out your behavior, how you responded to certain criteria, certain stimuli, situations, etc. And really, the idea there is that your past performance is a great indicator of how you will perform in the future. So, so that's not uncommon. More companies are going toward that anyway, but it's because I think it's hard to, hey, tell me about a time when a unicorn came crashing into the office. You're not going to have made that up before you went into the interview. You're going to have to think of that on the fly and give them a serious answer.
I think they're supposed to be a little bit less judgmental too. There's complete to star is probably a familiar term with Matt. They just, tell me about a situation, a time, and what were the results of it, and just go through that. I've used that technique when I interview now with potential job opportunities and been successful because it kind of people that aren't experienced in that, I think, interviewers, they tend to not, it kind of blows them away, because your big corporations have gone to that, but your smaller companies, I don't think have really caught on to it yet. So when you start talking like that, they're like, man, this guy knows what he's talking about. What I mean?
Yeah.
It's also a way to give everybody the same interview. So that's the other thing is that you're not giving one person an advantage over another. Somebody can't come back and say, hey, you didn't ask me the same questions that you asked Bob over there. So it takes out the bias or just potential to discriminate. Just give me the same answer or give me the same question for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And it helps the interviewer along too, because a lot of people don't have that experience, of how to interview. And I've been in interviews where the person interviewing me talked 90% of the time, and you're like, "Well, are you going to ask me about me, or are you just going to keep talking about the job?"
Right.
So. Absolutely. So, hey, everybody knows that the COVID-19 vaccines are a big deal. As a matter of fact, I got my second vaccine Saturday. And I'll tell you what, if there was a ribbon for, the biggest baby award right here, big recipient, Sunday, I was on my butt, 102 to 103 temperatures all day.
Really?
Body felt like I played a football game, left the football game, went right to a hockey game, and then came home. I was
You must have had Moderna. Did you have the Moderna?
No, I had the Pfizer. Yeah.
Really?
I had Pfizer number 2, and that
Tim,
thing put me down for a day.
I told you that the guy in the alley downtown is not giving out vaccines. That's not what you got.
That wasn't Pfizer. Oh, you know what? There wasn't a Z in there. He just had this cardboard sign.
His name was Pfizer.
Pfizer. There wasn't a Z. Dang it. Well, that explains the chills then. No, that. But I was glad to get vaccinated. So it was a rough 24-hour period though. So
right.
Monday morning, woke up with just a little bit, that headache still hanging on. A few hours into Monday, I was good to go. But National Guard troops are working on convoys transporting the COVID-19 vaccines across the state of Texas when a gunman decides to hold them up while transporting these vaccines. So these National Guard troops it looks like they probably stopped at a pilot travel rest stop, truck stop thing, probably, grab a bite to eat quick, use the restrooms, and then get back on their way. About 10 miles. I'm sorry, it wasn't a pilot. It was a Love travel station. About 10 miles from this travel station, 66-year-old Larry Harris decides to make multiple attempts to run these vans off the road. Finally, stopping the vans and then holding these troops at gunpoint, claiming he believes they kidnapped a mother and child, which they did not. What I find mildly, nobody, the police showed up, everybody was fine. No one was injured. No cops, Larry himself, nobody was injured.
Good old Larry.
But what's interesting about this is you have a bunch of these Guard members with no weapons, no ammunition. I get it. It's a domestic. You're transporting medicine. You would hope you don't need weapons.
I thought about this too when we were talking about this, because I'm like, these days these are military troops in military vehicles.
Mm-hmm.
There are people out there that might think, every time there's a tank on a train, people are like, oh no, the invasion's happening. I would just think that you would always have, if you're transporting military gear, somebody would be armed in that convoy. And this is a situation, I was going from Camp Pendleton to 29 Palms for a CAX exercise one time. This is back in the early 2000s. And I was on the vehicle. I was on the truck that was transporting all the machine guns. And so I had to be armed. I had to be loaded up. And we had to stop at a rest area too. And I had another guy with me. So we had 2 gear guards. But I had to go into a Burger King to use the restroom because I didn't want to go on the side of the road in front of all these cars. Went to this Burger King, and I had a M16 with a 203 slung across my back, and I'm carrying an M9 pistol on my front. And I walked into this place, and this place was crowded. Highway side Burger King, 1,000 people in there stopped. Like the music came to a screeching halt. This devil dog walks in. I got this 203 strapped on me. Anyway, but we were always armed. And we were always in a convoy. There were always a handful of us. And I was sitting there parked in this parking lot next to an LAV convoy, which, by the way, would be awesome, transporting armored vehicles up, just driving your LAV up the highway, Southern California. So, yeah, I mean, whatever. It sounds like Larry was having some sort of issue other than a problem with the National Guard.
It says Mr. Harris appeared to be mentally disturbed. Yeah, you're trying to run a bunch of troops off the road. You probably something's going on with you. Did they mess up your order, Matt?
They didn't mess up my order. They wouldn't dare.
He's like, I said extra pickles as he cocks the hammer back on the.
You gave me 8 pickles. I said extra. They're like, hey, yes, sir, of course, yes.
Oh my! And sometimes an article's headline just kind of reaches out and grabs you. And I'll say for this last piece of news, this is exactly what this headline did. I'm going to read it to everybody here, and then we'll get into it. Air Force says it rarely loses fighter target drones days after one washes ashore in Florida. So it's like, hey, we didn't let anybody know we lost one of these, but since you found it, hey, we've been looking for that.
This rarely happens. So we were looking at this, and each of these drones costs low price, bargain price of $570,000. And so
great deal.
Yeah. So when you rarely lose these, and we were looking up the stats, and it looks like they recover about 62% of them. So I made the assumption that we have 20 of them. And if we recover 62% of them, that means that we've lost $4.5 million worth of drones that just fell into the ocean and are now washing up on the beach where, little Billy, who's building a sandcastle, now these drones aren't armed. They're just airplanes they're like remote control airplanes that fly around they can shoot at, but we rarely lose them. I mean, imagine saying this, like, I rarely crash my Lamborghini. I rarely burn down a $500,000 house. Yeah. Rarely. It happens sometimes.
A few times a year, buy a Lambo, slam it into a wall.
Right. I own 20 of them. I've crashed 40% of them. It's fine.
It appears that they train in northern Florida and over the Gulf of Mexico, simulate fighting each other. They have about a 720 square mile area over the land and about another 123,000 square mile area over the open water for training and operational testing for its equipment. It's saying here, an MQ-9 Reaper drone shot a live air-to-air Block 2 missile at one of these BQM-167 drones, which simulated a cruise missile. But what they found, the one they found on the shores is the BQM-167, which Matt said has that price tag of $570,000. If you're going to lose $500,000 worth of equipment, there should be somebody saying like, hey, in case somebody sees this, maybe put a couple flyers up on the local neighborhood's light poles. Hey, missing. Put a little picture of your drone up there.
Do not chase. His name is Tommy.
Yeah.
Just call him Tommy.
Yeah.
Actually, these things are called Skeeter. Did you notice that? The Skeeter is capable of pulling 9 Gs.
The Skeeter. So you just put a little picture up, a little flyer up on the light pole. Missing. It says Skeeter. If found, call this number.
How much would like a little beacon that it falls in the water, it goes off like GPS type tracking?
you'd think they'd be able to find these a little bit better.
That sounds like too much common sense. But let's raise taxes. Let's raise taxes.
It says just 1 to 2 a year are unable to be retrieved. I mean, just $500,000 to $1 million worth of stuff every year. We lost it. We don't know where it is. Sorry.
Well, now in the grand scheme, like if they're flying 1,000 of these and 1 to 2 are not recoverable, then okay.
Yeah.
All right. I get it. It's still a lot of money. I get it. It is pretty cool. If you go on YouTube and look up CIWS, like CIWS, the CIWS guns on the side of a Navy ship, it's not these same things, but like they'll fire a missile at a CIWS gun and that thing will rip it apart in midair. It's awesome. And it's probably the same type of thing here. They need these things to come flying in like a missile or an airplane. And they got to shoot it down. But I have no idea. I made the assumption that they have 20 of them. And if they don't recover 40% of them, then that's again a bargain price of $4.5 million.
I'll tell you what. There's a specialized boat squadron battalion. It doesn't say what size is. I'm sure it's just a handful of people that are there to retrieve any drones that land in the water. I think that'd be a pretty sweet job. Just I'm out on the water in Florida all day. Oh, you guys, another one went down in the water. I'll go look around. I'd
sit out there in my boat, turn on the Beyond the Wire podcast, and then just wait for one of those things to fall in the water. Yeah, and I actually bring my fishing pole.
Yeah. You never know what you're going to catch out there.
Right.
Might be a drone, might be a fish.
Could be.
I know when I'm at the beach this summer, I'm going to be looking for a bright orange drone possibly floating up to me.
I'm going down there this year too. So
I may take it home with me.
I'm going to bring my metal detector. I'm going to sell it on eBay. Listen, I'll sell this for $480,000.
Yeah. I'm going to hang mine up right here behind me.
To somebody overseas, and then the next thing you know, the FBI is knocking on my door.
Yeah. Yep. So, what's that behind you, Tim? I call it Skeeter.
That's my boy Skeeter.
So, let's transition. Let's get into our guest a little bit today. So, Caleb, you were a recruiter for a while there in the Army. What did you originally get into the Army to do, though?
I joined as infantry.
Okay.
A little bit of backstory with me. Out of high school for a few years, mowing grass for a company I mowed with, and not really doing anything that's career based, So I call up a recruiter one night, Army recruiter. Being a recruiter, this makes a whole lot more greatness story than before. But I call him up. I'm like, hey, I want to look at joining the Army. He's like, I said, can I come set up an appointment? He's like, oh, I'm available right now. So I'm a call in. If you've been a recruiter, you know what that is. It's like, so you think one or two ways this is going to go. He's probably a rock, or he's got some criminal offense or something like that. He's not going to be eligible to join. So I go take the pre-ASVAB. I don't have any of those things that would disqualify me. I do great on the pre-ASVAB. Anyways, so this recruiter's excited, right? So I go join the Army. I get up there. I want to be a diesel mechanic. And the guy says, well, if you go in the infantry, you'll get a big bonus. So I'm like, really? So I set up. I didn't really know anything about the infantry, but so I wasn't some gung-ho guy like I want to do this and that. So I go train and all that stuff. First duty station's Fort Stewart, Georgia. That is 3rd ID. They're a mechanized infantry. Do that for a few years, go to Kosovo with them, come back and re-enlist and go to 101st Airborne. Was there for Iraq, first boots on the ground, all that stuff. And then I get back from Iraq and I get put on recruiting. So they let you, kind of request where you want to be. And I ended up going real close to where I grew up in Ohio, and spent the next 3.5 years doing that. And when it was time to re-enlist, some personal things that happened in my life. I got married, I want to settle down, things like that. So got out and transitioned to civilian life and moved to Nashville, Tennessee. So there's been several things go on since then, but my first job, you think, and me and Matt talked about this previously, but you think when you get out that you're going to be able to just do all these great things, like, and when you interview, like we were talking about earlier, you think, well, they're just going to hire me because I'm getting out of the Army. Yeah. I mean, and I'm a war veteran and I did all this. And they're like, oh, well, we got this entry-level job. And that's what I started. I didn't mind, military. Let's, kind of like what your question was, I'm going to do what I have to do to get where I want to be. Right. But it was a struggle. You're kind of like, well, when am I going to get where I want to be? So
yeah, that caught my eye when I posted that video on LinkedIn, and you commented in there. And my video was about leaving the room, being inside of the room. Your military service is like being inside of a room. You've got all these people inside of the room with you, and everything is inside of that room. And then one day the door opens and you come out, and you said something along the lines of, "I went from being a somebody to a nobody." Can you tell us a little bit more about that? How does that feel? What does that mean?
When you're in the military, any branch, I think you feel like you're 10 feet tall and bulletproof. That's ingrained in you. It's you march to that, and then and you're working hard towards the metrics that you're measured by, or a lot of them, especially with my MOS, was physical. How fast you can run, how many push-ups, sit-ups, all those things. And then you get out of the military and there's no metrics that measure your physical stamina or anything like that. It's all based on, what did you do for me today? You go into sales, it's how much did you sell? You go and, managing, how's your team doing? Or whatever, production, how many widgets did you build today? So it's, and you go from thinking that you're somebody, which you are. I mean, you're a proud veteran. You should be proud of that. But I don't think that civilian life sees a lot of the leadership skills and the skills you've obtained while being in the military as good selling points. What I was told with my first job was, we'll bring you in, the entry-level job, and then maybe you can work up from there. So I'm working hard, get my numbers up, all those things, in a sales role, and opportunity comes out to be a supervisor, put in for it. Guy that started the same day as me, he gets promoted over me. And I always, right or wrong, thought, hey, I got this military background, leadership. I felt like I would have an edge for whatever reason, but you don't have that. I mean, it's, and that's not a negative thing towards the employer. I think that maybe there could be some changes along the line with military, how we, when they're getting out and transitioning, what options are there for them to learn how to interview?
Right.
Because I don't think I know when I got out and they helped me write a resume, and now I look at my resume, I'm like, they didn't help me write a resume. Yeah. That did not sound anything like civilian. A staff sergeant should not be on a resume. It needs to say something that fits the vocabulary of the hiring manager, that they catches their eye. And even now more so than ever, resumes are like, people peruse over them in about 30 seconds. You got about 30 seconds to catch somebody's attention. Yep. And if you have, my first resume they helped write for me was like 3 pages long. Whoa, stop. It doesn't need to list everything you did from the time you were born, just snapshots. And I don't think that that part is done successfully, right? And it may have changed. I've been out since 2007. Hopefully it's improved. I know there's been a lot of good initiatives and, a lot of people out there that have fought to make things better for civilians getting out, or military getting out into the civilian world to help them cope, so to speak.
Caleb, I think you make some great points there. The metrics used to compare us while we were in the military, it's physical based. It's what can you do physically. These are the standards that are set. You have to meet or exceed these. And once you get out, nobody cares. You can do 100 push-ups. You can do, 200 sit-ups in under 2 minutes, whatever it is. You can run your 3 miles. It's okay. How can you help our KPIs get better? How can you help this? How can you drive revenue? How can you increase our sales? How can you increase our production while decreasing our costs? Mm-hmm. And you don't, straight out of the military, you don't have any footing in that world. You can't say, well, this is exactly what I can do. And you also mentioned your resume, the verbiage there of, I was a staff sergeant who led a platoon and, I had 40 individuals. It's hey, I have leadership of, 40 plus individuals, operations, intelligence, It's like you said, it's just taking that big chunk of military verbiage and packaging it up into this clean and concise. Hey, you don't care that I was a staff sergeant or a corporal or whatever. It's, I have small team leadership, goal-oriented, operations.
Honestly, if you took 6 or 8 years of military service or more and tried to plug it into a 1-page resume, you're going to put about 10% of the stuff on there.
Yeah.
If you look at people who have done probably any more than 4 years, I could probably fit a 4-year career in the military onto a 1 or 2 page resume. But anything beyond that, you're talking about like somebody who spent 10 years in the military or even 20 years in the military, 20 plus. If you were to put all of their experiences and all of their bullet points down on a piece of paper, it would be a 20-page document, if not longer. And so what they're trying to do is take a job description, or rather a career description, and fit a job description at a company. Hey, I'd like to do this underwater basket weaving job. Here's how I line up to it. That's what I always tell people. Take your resume, take your experience, and make it look as much like the job description as is possible. Don't fudge, don't lie. But if you had a little bit of underwater basket weaving experience, put that on that resume and make it look like the job description. But you don't have to put your entire life down on that piece of paper. And it's one of those things that I frequently see it coming out of the military, and the resources, Caleb, to answer the question you said before, the resources have gotten a lot better than they were, in the middle 2000s. When I got out, it was like, here's how you write a resume, put your name at the top, and then. Yeah. And that's it. Do you not spell your name? Right. Say things you did. Well, I distinctly remember this. I remember the half an hour long conversation about what type of resume paper to use. And I don't know if you guys ever had that conversation.
I've had in-depth conversations about the papers.
They're like, make sure that the watermark is facing the right way for the front of the sheet. And I'm thinking back on that now, like you could hand me a piece of plywood with a resume etched on it, and that might be good enough. Yeah. Like I don't care about what kind of paper.
Content.
Right. It's the content. It could be smeared with mud. And if you walk up to me and shake my hand and you're a top performer with a really good attitude, like I'm probably going to stop and talk to you versus peruse your resume.
Matt, I'm happy you said smeared with mud. If you said smeared with blood, that one might.
No, if it was
you might not be the fit.
Smeared with blood, I'd be like, another Marine, huh? No, it really is like it's one of those things. Like the resume. Everybody puts so much emphasis on the resume, but the resume these days, for me, the resume is great. I'm looking at your LinkedIn profile. I'm looking at how you approach me in an email. Like, hey, don't send me a note and say, hey, what do you have for me? I can't do anything with that. Send me a note and say, hey, my name's Caleb. I've got all this experience. I've got more experience on the civilian side. You know what? I'm after this position in your company. I think I'd be a top performer. Tell me how I get in the door. That right there is like, wow. Every hiring manager wants to hire that person to an extent, given experience, et cetera. But we were talking before about the, you're going from somebody to nobody. And I recall this very distinctly. If you look at the military for enlisted and even officer, 19, 20, 21 years old, you're leading troops. I couldn't buy a beer in a bar legally. And I was in charge of, probably hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars of weapons and weapon systems. And I was shooting, the Javelin missile simulators and sliding out of ropes on a helicopter and doing all this cool stuff that most men will only ever see in movies or play on video games. Mm-hmm. And then one day I hung up that uniform and came out and people looked at me like I had two heads. Mm-hmm. And hey, the best we can do is you can empty these trash cans, which is an honorable profession, but that's not what I want to do. And that's not what I've done. Like, show me the way. So I'm with you. That's why it struck me, Caleb, that statement that, you go from being somebody to nobody suddenly. And the nobody comes from your civilian counterparts are not aware of what you've done if they haven't been there.
I think they're appreciative,
Sure.
They appreciate what you did. And I don't want to be misconstrued as that, but
No.
I think that they just don't get it. They think that what you did was a video game or a movie for the past, myself, 9.5 years almost, to do all that. They think that's what you were infantry. You must have,
right.
The famous old question, what'd you do? How many? Things like that.
Yeah.
That's what they automatically
Right.
think.
Yep.
I've been asked that question in interviews. I've been asked that question first day on the job, and you're like, I don't really want to talk about that or whatever. But that's my point is that's what they think. That's what they think the military is.
I always lean in and like cock an eyebrow and say, I may have hurt a couple of people's feelings. Like, I don't want to ask any more questions. But yeah, you're right. I think that's where we have a responsibility now. This is this discussion. I don't ever want to be misconstrued as somebody who's complaining that nobody knows what we did or what we do in the military, or what they understand. What I want people to hear is that this is the best talent in the entire world.
Yeah.
That these men and women who put on this uniform, in so many cases, and not everybody, not everybody that serves in the military is your top performer, your amazing rock star, and we know that. But what it is a competitive set of talent that any company can take advantage of. And if you understand what they've done, or you at least try to understand or try to interpret it, man, game changing. It's game changing. I always talk about the machinist mates, or somebody like that off of a Navy ship, for example. These are people that if the ship breaks in the middle of the ocean, you can't pull it into like the gas station and get old Bob to come out and fix it for you. Like, you've got to keep that thing running out in the Pacific Ocean during a storm. These are people that know how to, they will literally machine and create parts from nothing, not from nothing, but they have to keep the ship running. This is a $1 billion aircraft carrier, for example, or a submarine underwater for months at a time. You can't just say, hey, let's pull it back into port. No, we've got nuclear missiles on this thing, So that's just a prime example. I could talk about it all day long, but these are men and women that are trained in zero-fail environments, and they have more classroom time and education in a 4-year military enlistment than a college student does. It's just a matter of tapping into what that looks like from a civilian sector.
You guys kind of both brought this up, but when people are just transitioning out, most of them themselves still don't fully understand their own potential. And it's that old, you got a big hunk of coal, all these people getting out of this big hunk of coal, they're rough around the edges, they're a little dirty from their time in the service, they still got some sand in their pockets, some mud on their face. You gotta get in there. You gotta work them a little bit. You gotta start sanding them down, and you're gonna expose this diamond slowly. And you just gotta keep working it. Work on those, not your weaknesses, but your opportunities, as they like to call them now. Find those opportunities and keep working on those opportunities. And before you know it, they're gonna be nice. They're gonna be smooth. They're gonna be rock steady and ready to go. And more of them than not will turn into, as Matt likes to say, turn into these rock stars.
And to add to that, the employer has, for the employer's interest, the employer has the interest of making this person better and polishing them up. But also you, the transitioner, you, the prior service member, this is 180% your responsibility. Look for those opportunities to become what I call the obvious choice. I know we've all heard that probably through our careers. Be the obvious choice. When they go to interview 5 people, you're the one. You're the smartest person in the room because you've made yourself the obvious choice. It is nobody else's responsibility to get you the education or the experience that you need to be the best person in your job. If you want to be the best person in your job, go out and hunt it down and get it.
I call it being bulletproof.
It is, yeah. Right.
We're all going to walk into this interview room, the 7 candidates. We're going to line up in front of this firing squad of interviewers, and I'm the one that's bulletproof. They're not taking me down. I'll be the one left standing.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So.
Well, I think you've hit on a good point earlier, Matt, where employers don't look at resumes like they used to. You're looking at LinkedIn and Facebook or all these things. My current job, I didn't even apply for it. They reached out to me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's that's the world we live in.
I've had so many opportunities like that over the years where I just did network. I showed up at the right events. I shook the right hands. And then when it came time to fill a position, somebody was leaving a position or somebody was opening a position like, hey, I'm opening this position. I'd really like to talk to you about it. That's been the bulk of my experiences as well. And I tell people that all the time because shamelessly, that's the way you want to be. You want to be, again, the obvious choice. You want people to know that what you're capable of, so that when a job opens and you just knock at somebody's door like, hey, I'm interested in taking a look, they don't even want to look at your resume. They just want to bring you into the office and have an interview.
Well, yeah, I mean, 2003, 2004, you said, Caleb, you got out in 2007?
Yes. Yep.
I mean, so the internet was really starting to pick up around that time with social media and things like that. But at that time, it's, find that job, submit the resume, wait to get the call to set up the interview. You might call ahead and, hey, just wanted to check in. I submitted my resume. Can I talk to the hiring manager? And you might do that, but that's about as far as it's going to go. Mm-hmm. Nowadays, yeah, you can submit your resume, and then more than likely, if you got a couple bullet points on there that caught their eye in that 30-second glance, then they're going to go look at that social media. He's posting some stuff we don't really like. Let's push this one off. Okay, now we've whittled this pack down. Now they can reach out to you via email, and they're going to start a conversation. Before, you didn't have any face-to-face or any interaction with those individuals until you were in that interview room. And that was your one time to make the impression. Now you can mess up on your social media. You can mess up in an email. So you need to, maintain a professional front at all times.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and even so now, with COVID and everything, the interview process has changed to the format we're in right now.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, it's Teams or Zoom or whatever. And my boss, I've never even met him, in person, and he doesn't even, remote has become a different dynamic now. So there's a lot of changes that probably the military is going to have to adjust for too. How do you interview when you're talking like this? It can be a little different, but so there's opportunities.
Right. Something that you just said, Tim. Also, it's that social media piece. That is that, especially in election season. We just went through an election season.
We're only 3 years away from more of those posts coming on.
Not even three.
Yeah.
I see just a ton of very heated conversations happening between people. And I have gone in as a recruiter in my career. I've gone in and looked at people's social media things. I've searched them on LinkedIn. I've searched them in different places. LinkedIn, especially, because LinkedIn is supposed to be a professional environment. And every once in a while, you catch the person writing some political stuff in there, and you can go to people's LinkedIn profiles and see where they've commented and where they've left comments and likes and interactions. And it's almost like career destructive to do something like go join one of those political conversations on LinkedIn. We've gotten to this point, or even Facebook, especially if it's public, people can see you writing that. Mm-hmm. And I'm not saying that we're entitled to our opinions, and here in the United States, we have the ability to kind of go out and say what we want to say, and that's within reason. But there are still things that can preclude you from being employed at certain places, and especially if you become let's call it like a social media risk, like somebody who's out writing things that are like maybe not jiving with what the company is, the company's persona might be, but I always tell people, leave that kind of stuff out of there. Like, don't get on LinkedIn. People always want to tell everybody what their opinion is. They always want to share, like, hey, I disagree with this, or this is how the election went. Good for you. Have that conversation around the bonfire in your backyard, not on LinkedIn when you're looking for a job. It's going to knock you out.
Well, did you hear the famous, you may have heard this story before, the girl that's on her way home, I think she was from South Africa maybe, and she's getting ready to board a plane around Christmas time, and she posted a tweet that was very derogatory. It was she was fired in air. She didn't even know she'd lost her job till she landed.
It was a reporter. She landed in South Africa, and when she turned her phone back on, a million mentions on Twitter, phone calls from friends and family. Her work was reaching out to her, and she landed without a career. And it definitely, especially now. I mean, you're putting that out there to the entire world essentially, because if one person in your network or group of friends on Facebook or whatever it is, followers on Twitter, sees that, doesn't agree with it, they decide to share it, you've now grown, the people that see that, one of those individuals share it, and it just goes and goes and goes, and before you know it, millions of people have seen this. And
it, in your personal networks, like your Facebook, and like those are the places where you keep those, the Discord, political Discord, fine. That's where it is. And I'm one of those people too. I love having those conversations, but nothing ever becomes nasty. Nothing ever becomes like charged to the point where somebody's going to be offended. But particularly, I would never, ever have that conversation into a network where I'm trying to use for my career progression. You simply cannot. It's destructive. It's the worst thing you could do.
Caleb, I wanted to talk about your time as a recruiter. How'd that go for you? Is that really kind of what got you into sales? Did you realize, hey, I have a talent for this?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes. It's so you get voluntold to do it. So recruiting duty, it's a lot of hours. Our sergeant major sat us down in a room, all these new recruiters. There's like I think there was over 30 of us, which is pretty big swing because we'd all been in Iraq. And then there's this influx of swapping positions and stuff like that, because they held recruiters that were supposed to do it 3 years. They held them for a little longer or whatever. So anyways, we're sitting in this big room, and Sergeant Major, he thinks he knows the answer, but he didn't get the answer he thought he would. He says, how many of you would rather be over in Iraq in the desert than recruiting? Stand up. Well, the whole room stood up. They'd rather, I didn't join the Army to be a recruiter.
Right.
So I didn't like it at first. I didn't want to do it, but the more I got into it, I really enjoyed it. I'm helping these kids that maybe, I can remember going to this one kid's house, and his mom, dad, sister, uncle, grandparents all live in this 3-bedroom house. Wow. He's living in the garage, and he joined the Army. I wish I could track him down and see where he is now, but you changed his life.
Yeah, you gave him a way out.
Yes, exactly. And there was many situations where, go to the projects and stuff like that, and you're helping a kid out, and you're just, I think that's what I enjoyed of recruiting, is I felt like I was doing something for someone. And I still use that today with my sales. It's so much sales now is about, what can you do for me service wise and things like that. I mean, because everybody's got the same widget. Yeah. It's how fast can you get that widget to my doorstep so I can, be productive with it. So it's still helping people. It's not the same, I guess, results where you're turning their life into something. But I think that gave me passion for getting into sales and just being able, I enjoy talking to people, learning about their life, learning about what their business and things like that, what they like, don't like, all those things. And I think if you have a passion for what you're doing, you're just going to excel at it. I mean, it's no different than what you guys are doing. You're going to, if you have a passion for it, it's going to be great. If you're just kind of like, I'm going to do this today because I got to make the donuts. It's just not, you're not going to enjoy it, and nobody else around you is either.
Who wouldn't enjoy making donuts? Donuts are amazing. I don't want to eat the donuts. Make them, Matt eats them. Caleb, I wanted to ask, when you were giving us a little bit of your background, like how you ended up in the Army, it sounded like you made it extremely easy on that recruiter. I wanted to know if anybody made it that easy on you. Like you kind of called him, said, "Hey, I'm looking at going in the Army. What can you do for him?" And he's like, "Hey, come on, let's talk." And you went down like, "I want to be a mechanic." He's like, "How about the infantry?" You're like, okay,
yeah, I'll take that.
I didn't really have any. I can't think of any. I'd had call-ins and stuff like that, but it seemed like it was the opposite of that. You know?
Most of them
I got
chasing them down.
Yeah, I gotta chase them down, or they walk in and they got some background. And when I was recruiting, there was a lot of leniency, and we let a lot of people in that maybe gave them second chances, so to speak, with their criminal background or whatever. And I was, I was willing to work with them to try to give them that chance. And a lot of recruiters don't do that. I actually went to the Air Force recruiter before I joined the Army, and he didn't want to give me really the time of day. He was just like, well, and I was married at the time, and you got to do this and da. And I just got, and then I call up the Army recruiter and I'm like, can I come down right now? I got some time. Sure. It's 6:30 at night. I'm like, really? You're still there? Yeah. Little did I know that was every night of recruiter.
Yeah. We've had this conversation. We've had a handful of recruiters in here. We've had this conversation, and it's funny that, and not to pick on the Air Force, but this is not the first time. That's why I'm over here laughing when you said the Air Force recruiters like, nah, I don't really. It's not the first time I've heard that, and that was also my own experience too. When I went to join the Marines, I walked in to talk to all the recruiters, and they were in one short hallway. So it's Marines and Air Force on the left side, Army and Navy on the right side. And the Navy guys were in there like watching a movie with the lights off. And, they wanted to talk to me, but they weren't in a hurry. The Army's office was like a party. There were like 16 recruiters in there and like 400 kids. Mm-hmm. The Marines office was painted bright red. And I didn't see anybody in there when I walked past, but all the lights were on. And the Air Force guy was never, ever, ever there.
Not before 10, for sure.
Right. I mean, just like I'd show up
out by 5.
Yeah, they were never there. But as I was trying to sneak out of the building, after I talked to everybody, I was trying to sneak out of the building. This Marine Master Sergeant came out with like 400 rows of ribbons and medals on in his dress blues. He's like, "Hey, buddy, let's have a quick chat." And that was it. I was like, "Sign me up. If I can wear that uniform, sign me up."
Can I touch one of those medals?
Right. Right.
No.
Get away from me. But I would like to hear, because I'd love to hear the stories of recruiters in the military. Did you have, Caleb, did you have any like special tactics or fun stories of things that you did to go get people? Like, we heard one story from a recruiter who went and paid for a kiosk in a mall. And then when the other branches would come in and try to walk around the mall security would actually kick them out because they weren't paying customers. And then we had Rob Arndt on here one time. He was a Marine recruiter, and he said that he would sneak into the Air Force office sometimes and call the candidates the Air Force recruiter was talking to and leave really nasty messages on their voicemails.
"Hey, Mrs. Jones, your son's a waste of space and we don't need him." And then the next day, call, "Hey, Mrs. Jones, I'm just checking in, seeing how Tommy's been.
Yep.
This is us down here at the Marine Corps recruiting station. Just, if he's ever interested in joining up, we'd love to talk to him. He sounds like a upstanding guy."
Mrs. Jones would call back and be like, "That Air Force guy was really mean."
Yeah.
I don't think they did anything that extreme with the kiosk or called the list or anything. I had my own list to deal with, but I think probably my favorite thing to do was go to these schools before or when the teachers had in-service days, and I'd get a catered lunch for them. Mm-hmm. So they're real, "Hey, this guy got us lunch, all this stuff. Oh, we really appreciate it. So when can I present to your class?" Yep. And I did more presentations that way because they're like, "Oh yeah, well, he bought us lunch." So, and I did that pretty much all my schools. I did that for all.
That's a smart move.
Did you have monthly quotas? What were those quotas like?
It was usually 2 to 3 recruits was average. And then they would do what, I don't know what Marines called it, but it'd be grad alpha, grad bravo, and then you'd have senior alpha, senior bravo. Those are, senior alpha is anybody that scores over a 50 on the ASVAB. Mm-hmm. It's same with grad alpha, graduate, graduated from high school. And then you'd have your others, you never got tasked with another, but they might fit in a category to make your number. An other would be somebody with a GED or something like that. And you got points based on, you didn't get a bonus. Everybody thinks they get bonuses or whatever. At least I didn't. You get points, and you wanted to achieve different things. So you get more sapphires or gold stars in your badge, your recruiting badge, and then you work your way up to a recruiting ring. I was able to achieve that. And then the next level is like the Morale Award, that's your career recruiters. There's a few that get it in 3 years, but those are the guys that they're in a really good area, or they're just 80, 90 hours a week pounding it. And that is, they
didn't have any money for bonuses because they were spending it on drones that they're losing in the ocean.
So Caleb, we brought it up earlier, that feeling of, you just, not that we turn into nobodies, but that feeling of purpose, that feeling of belonging to something goes away once you get out. So you do that time as a recruiter. You said, personally things changed in your life, and it was just time to go. You get out. Did you know then that you wanted to try to get into sales?
Not really, I guess. Okay. I think my first job was I was a route sales.
Okay.
I thought it was more like service than sales, and it really helped me. As much as I felt like I was a nobody, it did help me in my civilian career to learn those things and learn how to interact with people and, get them what they needed. So I think that it built me to move on and get, and the company I was with, I worked my way up with them eventually. I don't think I was any fast track, but I had to prove myself. And I had this conversation with my wife. I basically started my career when I got out of the Army. Mm-hmm. It's not like I had already done 10 years. And then, so anything that she does, she's about 10 years ahead of me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because that's just the way it works. And I'm not saying that negatively. That's just, they look at what your civilian career was, and working yourself back up to this point, I think can be a little overwhelming at times, because the bottom doesn't pay as much, and that concept, that idea that you're not making a whole lot of money in the military can also go into civilian. When they hire somebody, they think, well, this guy's used to he doesn't make a whole lot.
Bottom of the barrel,
yeah, I made good money.
Mm-hmm.
And not as a private, but I got out as an E6 pay grade, you're getting BAH, mm-hmm. Paying for your housing, paying for your food, all those things. Recruiting duty pays an extra because it's special duty assignment. Mm-hmm. All those things, overseas pay, you don't pay taxes, all those things that go in, and then you get out and they're like, well, you're going to make $15 an hour.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's not going to work out. I still have bills to pay now. Yeah. So are you also paying for my housing? Because
whereas I don't see the BA.
I brought this up earlier. You talked about being that route sales. You started to build those skills of sales as a recruiter. That route sales really started to polish you up. You got out as that hunk of coal, and you started to polish yourself up. So where did you go after the route sales? You kept on with the sales?
Yes. Then I went into supervising a group of the same deal, mm-hmm. Right along with them, tell them what they're doing right, what they're doing wrong, things like that. And then eventually you kind of take over with going to a higher management role where the supervisor's reporting to you, and you're just managing the day-to-day things, and you're really out in front. Your job is to be out in front of the customer without the route sales or anything. You're responsible for, you got top, if I remember right, like 180 customers that you're needing to talk to on a regular basis. And you're measured by that. How many face-to-face did you have, telephone, all those things. And that taught me a lot too, with what it takes to get a sale. so many times in recruiting, you had P1 to P4 prospecting. P1 was like your mail at that time or email. P2 was picking up the phone, smiling and dialing. That's how you made your appointments. P3 was out there face to face at the kiosk at the mall. You're out there just running into somebody, and the pizza guy, the guy delivers pizza. He doesn't know he's about to be an appointment tomorrow. You know what I mean? So you're constantly looking for that next opportunity. But the big thing that a lot of people forget is follow-up, and I think that's even when you go back to going into a new career. When you go interview, I think that one of the best things you can do when you leave that, and not as soon as you get in your car, let them mull over it and all that, but within 24 hours, you need to send them some type of correspondence, an email, however you've been communicating, and thank them for the opportunity. Just brief, thank you for the opportunity. It was nice to get to know you, blah, blah, blah. Maybe there's something that's an opportunity for you to say something that maybe you're like, man, I really didn't respond to that question as well as I'd like, but maybe I could polish it up a little bit better and just throw a little bit of one-liner in there to grab their attention again. And I've done that many times. And
that's a great point, though. I just, when you just said follow up, I thought about two instances. I recently purchased something from a contractor, and the purchase was in. It's a service that's supposed to be provided, but then after I banging on my door to make that purchase, and then after the purchase was complete, nothing about execution, nothing about delivery, nothing. It's just stopped. And I realized this the other day because I'm like, man, I paid for this. I need to go get it executed. Secondarily to that, and again, it's along the lines of a contractor. I wonder how many people lose potential business because they come out, they give you an estimate, they have the initial conversation, and then nothing happens after that. Another example of this is I had somebody come out and bid me for a new deck, and this was probably in the fall, and they bid me for the deck. They're like, we'll get back to you in like a week with an estimate. Nothing. 6 months later, they're calling me now. They're like, hey, do you still want to do the deck? And I'm like, yeah, but not with you guys, because it took you 6 months to get back to me. I don't want that business. And I think you're absolutely right, Caleb. It comes back in, like, if we have an initial conversation, especially if you're a salesperson or as a recruiter, works the same. If I'm really interested in talking to you, I'm going to stay on top of you. I'm going to keep in. With a sale, especially if you're commission based or making some sort of something on top of your salary, man, to pass up a potential opportunity just by not following up, by not having one phone call or one email afterwards. I wonder how many millions or billions of dollars in sales are lost on an annualized basis. It's crazy.
Yeah. Right.
Well, we're almost at that hour mark, so we're going to get on out of here this week. Caleb, I want to thank you very much for coming on and sharing some time with us today. You made some great points. Yeah. So you're down in Nashville now. You going to put out a country record anytime soon?
Probably not.
No. I figured that's what everybody goes to Nashville to do.
You walk down the strip. I don't know what that street's called. Walk down the strip. Probably in a non-COVID world, walk down that strip and literally every window has a band in it. Not kidding. Took my son there a few years ago, and he was amazed. Like, Dad, we're walking down the street and every window has a band playing. Every window has a drummer in it. It's kind of interesting.
And even if it's on the first floor, second floor, same bar,
right?
They'll both have one.
Yep. Wow. Yep. Yeah. A lot of talent there.
Yes.
Yep. It's pretty crazy. Matt, you got anything before we get out of here?
Nope. I have no sage advice. Caleb, I appreciate you joining us today. Caleb and I worked in the same company a number of years back. And so, it's one of those things where you keep the network alive, people you talk to even from time to time. And then boom, one day they show up on LinkedIn and we're having a conversation and it spurs this hour-long chat. So appreciate it, Caleb.
Thank you.
As always, you can find us on all the major social media platforms. So if you're there and you like us, follow us, like our posts, share them. We make them shareable. And as far as podcasts go, you can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, all the other major podcast platforms. Leave us a rating review. Let us know how we're doing. Helps us get out there. They push our content to other potential listeners, and we would appreciate that greatly. Until next time, we'll be right back here on the Beyond the Wire podcast.